Hello friends, welcome to another Out of Spec Bits video. My name is Shane, and today I'm going to be talking about what it's been like to own a Lucid Air for the past couple of years. So I just recently had my second year anniversary with my 2023 Lucid Air Touring, and I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about what my service history has been like, how reliability has been, and what some of the major issues I've encountered along the way have been. So I hope you'll join me as I dive into some of those questions. So before I jump in, I just wanted to kind of summarize a few important bits of information before we dive in, and just kind of make it clear, this isn't necessarily a review of my car or what my experience overall has been like. This is mostly going to be focused on service history and reliability and some of the more notable issues I've had along the way. So a lot of these things are going to be towards the negative side of what my experience has been like, but I want to just make it clear that my ownership experience on the whole has been really, really fantastic. And so, as you'll see through this video, there are a decent number of issues and hiccups I've had along the way, but overall, my ownership experience has been really positive. I've really loved the car. I still love the car, and so this isn't trying to bash Lucid or bash the car. It's just trying to be a little bit transparent and to show what ownership has been like for me. So I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. There are no physical Lucid service centers in the state of Utah. There is a mobile service team that covers the Idaho and Utah area, and I think a little bit of Colorado too. That's maybe changed at some point. But there is a mobile service team that does cover my area. And the official Lucid service center that's assigned to owners in the Utah area is actually in Seattle. So that's over 800 miles away from me. So that's important to note. I think mostly because throughout these 2 years, my car has only had to actually be physically sent to the Seattle service center one time. And we'll get into that a little bit later. The rest of the issues we're going to talk about have either been addressed or mostly addressed by the mobile service team. And the mobile service team out here is really awesome. The guys have been really great to work with. So I'm really impressed overall with how the mobile service experience has been for me in my Lucid Air. That's actually one of the things I was a little bit worried about when I was first considering a Lucid, is knowing that there is no physical service center really anywhere all that close to me. So I've been really pleased with that overall. And so as far as making appointments for service or asking questions about potential issues, so Lucid has what it calls customer care, which is basically their customer service entity. So for the most part, you can usually just send them a text message or give them a phone call or send them an email and kind of describe whatever issues we're having, and they'll do what they can to help you. So I would say my experience with that overall has been pretty good. I generally haven't had to wait too long to either get a response, to get some answers to my questions, or to get a service appointment set up. Usually by the time I send them an email or shoot them a text message, within the next few days, we've got an appointment scheduled, and it's usually a week or two out. So I'd say the speed of service and the turnaround time have been pretty good overall, especially considering I only have a mobile service team available for my immediate needs. And so with that, let's jump into the story. So this is going to be in chronological order. It's going to be a mixture of just different experiences and issues I've had, and then just kind of brief summaries of the different service appointments that I've had. So delivery day for me was March 19th of 2023. I took delivery of my car at the Cherry Creek Studio in Denver, Colorado. And I did that specifically so that I could get my car up to Colton over on the Out of Spec detailing channel up for a full paint correction and ceramic coating. And so if any of you remember the build quality analysis he did, that was my Lucid. So that was really cool. And that was a great experience. So what was nice about it is I had actually requested for Lucid not to wash my car just to avoid inducing more scratches in the paint so Colton would have an easier job. They totally obliged on that request, which was really great. And the delivery experience at the studio was great. All the people were very nice and professional and friendly, and it was a great experience overall. So as far as like the due bill for issues I noticed, really the only thing was that I was missing one of the NFC valet cards, basically. So you're supposed to get two. I only got one. So they did notice that during the initial delivery appointment, but really that was the only notable issue I had. And just to kind of quickly summarize what the warranty is like for these vehicles. So for new Lucid Airs, it's going to be a 4-year, 50,000 mile kind of overall vehicle warranty, and then powertrain and high voltage battery are each going to be 8 years or 100,000 miles, and then with retaining 70% capacity for the high voltage battery. So those will be important to note later on. So after getting my car detailed by Colton, I drove it home. It was actually on April 1st of 2023. And then over those next few weeks, there were a few little things I noticed that were an issue. And so I scheduled a mobile service appointment, and so this was my very first appointment with my car. So the first issue, unfortunately I don't have actual pictures of these, so hopefully I can kind of explain these. So on the passenger side, under the rear quarter glass, there's this little black strip underneath the glass, and mine had started to come loose at this end right by the rear passenger side door, and so it was actually kind of like flapping in the wind. So so I asked them to come out and fix that. And then another issue I had noticed is, so the pilot panel is this big kind of curved screen that sits right in front of the driver. On my car, kind of about right here on the other side of the panel, the backing had started to come loose just a tiny bit, and there were actually like a few little wires sticking through, which was really weird. So I had them look at that as well. So they came and replaced this trim piece. Haven't had any issues with that since, and they just ended up replacing the entire pilot panel screen, and haven't had any issues with that again since either. So this is actually stolen from Colton's build quality analysis video. So this is the piece of A-pillar trim that's right next to the driver's seat. And so what was interesting is Colton noticed that you can see like this kind of suede trim piece kind of is a little bit warped down here towards the dashboard. So you can see this kind of black piece along the windshield. It kind of disappears underneath that trim piece. And so, and you can even see up here, it's actually a little bit loose. It doesn't sit perfectly flush with this piece behind it. So that kind of got a little bit worse over time. And so I eventually asked them to come check it out, and they decided that the piece that was initially installed was defective and warped, so they ended up replacing that for me. After that, as temperatures started to warm up a bit, so this is May 19th of 2023, you'll just have to listen to yourselves for this one. not great. And so this has kind of been an ongoing issue, unfortunately, and not just for me, but for some other Lucid Air owners as well, is that kind of this, I think it's mostly this kind of like shroud that's along around the steering column, kind of makes that clicking, creaking noise when you're really turning the wheel or when you're applying torque, either like towards or away from you. It makes that really annoying clicking noise. And it gets especially bad when your car's been sitting out in the sun and the interior is really warm. So this was the first time I noted that. I asked them to come check it out and see if there was anything they could do about it. So next mobile service appointment was on June 29th. So I was still having some issues with the steering wheel. The TSB fix was to basically apply these little felt strips on the inside of the wheel, which helped a little bit. My steering wheel was never as bad as it sounded during that clip I just played, but it's kind of always been there ever since then. And then there was just this random work order for this wiper arm torque. I don't even really remember what that was. I think that was a pretty quick and easy fix for the mobile guys. So this is my first kind of weird major glitch or issue I had with the car. So in July, I had gone to Tesla Takeover out in California, and on my way back, I started seeing kind of weird charging and some faults from the car. So the first time I saw this was in Lovelock, Nevada, and so we can see in the picture in the top right. So I had plugged in for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes at most, and as I was just sitting in the car, all of a sudden everything shuts off and I get this drive system fault warning on the pilot panel display. So kind of freaked me out a little bit because I didn't know what was going on. So I unplugged the car, I shut it off, I kind of walked away just to let it kind of sleep and reset, to see if that would help anything. And this time I was able to actually, once I got back to the car, plugged it in again, and I was able to resume charging normally, and the drive system fault error had gone away. So I thought maybe it was just a weird glitch or something. So I thought I was good after that. So the next charging stop was to Battle Mountain, Nevada, and unfortunately I started seeing this issue again. So I would plug in, and this time after like less than a minute, again, the car would completely shut off, AC would shut off, screens would shut off. I couldn't shift it into reverse or drive or anything, couldn't shift it out of park, and the drive system fault would come back on. So I tried again to just get out of the car, let it reset, and again, it would seem like the error would clear, but this time, every other time I tried to plug in, within like 30 seconds or so, that error would pop up, and again, charging would stop, car would shut off. So I thought I was stranded for a little bit. So I wasn't sure if like the battery was overheating or something, and it was just trying to shut it off to prevent it from overheating. The temperature display on the car was saying it was 116 degrees when it was only 92 degrees out. So I wasn't sure if something was going on there. And unfortunately, there wasn't really any other charging option here at the stop in Nevada. So I ended up getting on the phone with Lucid to kind of figure out what I needed to do. I wasn't sure if I could make it to the next charging stop. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep seeing this issue. Wasn't sure if I was going to need a tow. So as I was working with Lucid, we were also talking with somebody from Electrify America to see if it was something on Electrify America's end or if it was something with the car. And through this kind of annoying dance of plugging in the car, charging for like 15 to 30 seconds, having it shut off, letting it reset, and then doing this all over again, eventually I actually did get enough charge to make it out of Battle Mountain and to the next stop, which was in Elko, Nevada. So I decided, instead of like waiting for a tow and going through all that mess, I decided I'm just going to try to make it to Elko because I think I have enough charge. And luckily I did end up making it. I did have to hypermile it a little bit, so I was going like 55 or 60, had my hazards on. I was trying to stay out of everybody's way. But I did make it to Elko, and after that, I did not have any issues. So, as far as what my understanding is that this was a specific glitch between the Lucid and these ABB Electrify America charging units. So, I don't know if there were ever any other owners that had like this much of an issue with it, but apparently it was like a known issue between those specific charging units and the Lucid. And luckily I can say I never had this happen again, but it was kind of a crazy thing, and I thought I was going to get stranded and have to get towed. And so eventually got home, everything was fine. So then I had a mobile service appointment on August 10th, and this was to perform a front seat homing procedure. So a little bit prior to this, they had introduced easy entry and exit settings for the front driver's seat, and for some cars they needed just to have this homing procedure done to enable that feature. So that was a quick and easy service appointment for that. And then on the 30th, so again, still having issues with the steering wheel, asked them to come look at it again, and unfortunately that A-pillar trim on the upper driver's side had come loose again, so I asked them to look at that as well. And then in September, still having issues with the steering wheel, asked them to look at that again, and again having issues with A-pillars. So these were obviously big pain points for me, and I had to have them come look at these multiple times, unfortunately. So now we're to October, so still having steering wheel issues. So the guys inspected it, and they determined it was coming from the actual steering column. So they ordered some parts, and then on the 11th, so just under a week later, they decided it was the shroud kind of over the steering wheel column, so they replaced that for me to see if that would resolve the issue. And then apparently there was this service needed for this malfunctioning, or potentially malfunctioning, coolant port valve. I think that was a pretty easy fix, and I don't even remember if that was a specific issue with my car. So on October 30th, I had noticed that the upper roof trim just above the rear windshield, the liner had started to come loose. So this is a picture kind of looking into the back of the car, so you can see the headrests on the back seats here, and you can see this trim is starting to kind of come loose a little bit. You can see like some of the Velcro right here. So I asked them to come take a peek at that, see if they could fix it. So they ordered a new interior piece for that and installed it about a week later, and that was it for a little while. So now we're into January of 2024. So now so kind of that same area but more on the C-pillar was also kind of doing the same thing, where it was, you could kind of see behind the trim through the rear windshield, so it looked like that piece was starting to get warped as well. So I had to look at that, and then while they were out here, I just had them do my annual maintenance for the car. So they called it Dream Edition. Mine's not a Dream Edition. Mine's just a Touring, but that's what they called it in the service report. So they just come out and change, wiper blades, cabin filters, top off fluids, that kind of thing. So in March, this is when I started having some issues with kind of the rear parcel shelf. So I noticed when I would go over bumps or dips in the road that it would make, some rattles and squeaks and stuff, which was pretty annoying. And then, as you can see again, my steering wheel is still having problems. So this time they just completely replaced the whole steering wheel assembly to see if that could resolve the issue. And then apparently the HVAC cabin filter box had become cracked at some point, so they replaced that for me as well. March 25th, unfortunately, that replacement of the steering wheel did not resolve it. And unfortunately, I did kind of have to push them on this one because, it's been almost a year of dealing with this kind of annoying clicking, creaking steering wheel. So they've replaced the steering wheel again and added more felt strips to see if that would resolve the issue. And kind of the annoying thing with these is that once they would do the replacements or add more of those felt strips, as the guys were there, the wheel would be totally fine. You could push and pull and tug on it as much as you wanted and it wouldn't make a sound. And then usually about a week or 2 weeks later, the creaking and clicking would be back. So it's just one of these unfortunate things with these cars that some owners have had to deal with it. And while it's never been as bad as it was initially for my car, it's still kind of always been there. It's 90 to 95% fixed, but just one of those weird, annoying little things that probably will just always be there. And so one other thing I noticed at this time is that, so this was towards the end of March, so temperatures are starting to warm up a little bit, starting to need the AC. And the first time I tried to actually turn on the AC this year, I noticed there was this really loud whistling coming from the vents and the airflow was really weak. So I had the guys come out and check it, and basically they just reset the HVAC system, and it seemed like after that everything was normal. So my guess is some of the valves and the HVAC ducting were just stuck closed for some reason, so it just wasn't out, because you could hear the fans ripping, but just wasn't much air coming out. But luckily they just reset all that. Everything was fine after that. I don't think I've really had any issues with that since. So now it's summertime, 2024, road trip season. So this is when I started seeing some really kind of severe thermal derating or charging issues with my car. So the first time I saw this was I was heading out to California, and we were on our last charging stop of the day. This was in Kettleman City, Electrify America, June 23rd. And this was easily the worst charging experience of my life. So it was a Sunday. For whatever reason, it was a very busy travel day, so there were tons of people out. So when we arrived here, there were 4, 5, or 6 cars ahead of us just even waiting to charge. And I think this is a 10 stall station, if I'm not mistaken. So we ended up just having to sit there and wait for at least 45 minutes before we could even plug in. And it was an extremely hot day, well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit out. And when we finally got in to charge, within a few minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, I noticed that our charging speeds were severely limited. So you can see I'm pulling 7 kilowatts at 46% stated charge. So I'm basically AC charging on a balanced 350 kilowatt unit. So I had never seen that before with my car. I didn't know what was going on. I just assumed it was just my battery was absolutely on fire at this point. This was the last charging stop of the day, so we had done several DC charging sessions before this, and it was well over 100 degrees out. So I just assumed my battery was totally overheated and just really not charging well. And so this picture was actually on our way out. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars just waiting in the street to charge. So it got even busier as we were leaving. So it's just, it was definitely the worst charging experience I've ever had. So, so about a month later, as you know, we're getting in the summer, things are getting nice and hot. I wanted to see if I could replicate that that charging issue I'd seen in Kettleman. So basically, what I decided to do is on a nice hot day, like upper 90s or 100 degrees plus out. I ripped my car up the canyon by my work for, like 15 or 20 minutes and took it straight to the charger just to see if I could kind of put a lot of heat into the battery, see if I could kind of replicate this and see if it really was like a thermal issue that was causing the poor charging. And so, so this is when I first plugged in. So I arrived at around 5 or 6%. Plugged in, and I didn't even get over 80 kilowatts. And it was a totally empty station. This is a brand new Electrify America with the nice PTC units. Wasn't really expecting or really believing any kind of charging issues from the actual chargers or the actual station itself. So I decided to unplug the car, let it sit in precondition for additional 20 minutes to see if it could actively get the battery cooled enough to get normal charging speeds again. And I also tried a few of the other charging units just to see if the one I had initially plugged into was just derated for some reason. So I peaked at about 175 kilowatts. So still well below my ideal speeds. And then I noticed that once I got up to around 45% stated charge, speeds severely decreased. And I again noticed that by the time I was to 50% stated charge, I was charging less than 10 kilowatts. So again, basically AC charging at this point. So seems like I was able to replicate that same scenario that I had encountered the month before. So I sat at 50% state charge, charging at sub 10 kilowatts for over 10 minutes before I finally got up to 51%. And I noted that it took over 30 minutes to get up to 50% from 10% stated charge. So really poor charging session. So I, again, just tried the last remaining unit just to see if there were any unit-specific issues. Charging started at 15 kilowatts. It kind of slowly crept up closer to normal charging speeds. And then after about 10 minutes, it started diving back down again. And then, so it took another 30 minutes to get from 51% state charge up to 67%. And there was an Ioniq 5 that arrived around this time. I noticed that they plugged in and got 240 kilowatts right off the bat, and they were at 40% stated charge. So I was fairly certain there was something wrong with my car. It wasn't a site or a specific charger issue. So wasn't really sure what was going on here. So more charging tests. So a week or two later, so this time I tried my local EVgo station just to see if there were any differences. So kind of did the same thing after work and let my car sit out in the 100-degree heat all day. Ripped it up the canyon, ripped it to the charger, and as you can see, I was still getting really awful charging speeds. So on this particular session, it took a half hour for the car to go from 17 to 36% state of charge. And so you can see it's only pulling 31 amps, and I'm only getting 20 kilowatts at 36%. So just really crazy awful charging speeds. So now that I'd remembered that I can actually see battery temperatures with the unofficial Lucid API, I wanted to do this one more time and just see if there was anything obvious from the API and see like what the battery cell temperatures were looking like. So this was on August 3rd of 2024. Wasn't quite as hot this day. I think it was only like in the mid 90s, but you know, still plenty hot. So kind of did the same procedure, ripped it up the canyon to get things nice and toasty, got to the charger as low as possible, arrived at 1% state of charge. And so these are the temperatures when I first arrived. So we can see the max cell temp, 48.4 Celsius, and the minimum cell temp was 46.2. So kind of on the warm side. I think for this particular battery pack that I had at the time, temperatures seems to want to be like closer to 30, maybe low 40s Celsius for your best charging speeds. So plugged in, sat around 80 kilowatts until up to 20%, so way below my ideal peak charging speed. So peak speeds should be, you know, mid 200s, maybe up to 275 when things were good. But only saw 80 kilowatts. Again, swapped to a different charger just to make sure it wasn't a specific charger issue. Didn't see any improvements in charging speeds. Slowly decreased to 40 kilowatts by 40%, and so we can see our max cell temp is up to 52.4, minimum cell temp is up to 49.3. After this, tried the 2 remaining chargers, just to rule out any charger-specific issues. I noticed that just before 50%, it did actually shoot up to 100 kilowatts, which is actually pretty close to what the normal charging curve would be, but then speeds quickly started to drop off again after that. Again, I noticed at this same site, Ioniq 6 came plugged in, was pulling 230 kilowatts at 16%, so obviously they weren't having any issues with the hardware here. And at this point I was up to 54.1 Celsius and 50.6. So I think for this particular battery pack, this is way hotter than it wants to be to actually get a good charge. So kept on charging. So temps seem to be decreasing around 65% state of charge finally. And so we're coming down just a little bit off of those peak speeds, and took me well over an hour to go from 1% state of charge up to 65% state of charge. So really, again, just like an awful charging experience here. So unfortunately, I never really got much out of Lucid out of that. I wasn't sure if this was something specifically wrong with my car. I sent all of this data to Lucid, and I never really got much of an answer back. So all I can assume is that this was just normal behavior, which I think is really unfortunate. As you can see, when these cars, or at least when my car, was really pushed to the limit from a thermal standpoint, charging speeds just completely go off the cliff. And so that was kind of a bummer. So next mobile service appointment was August 12th. So this time I had noticed that kind of the armrest over the center console was starting to creak. I usually kind of rest my elbow on that when I'm driving a lot, and so it was getting kind of annoying. I would go to kind of rest my elbow and kind of hang onto the steering wheel, and basically anytime I move my elbow, I get this really annoying clicking and creaking coming from that. So they did end up replacing that for me, and at the time, it seemed like it totally fixed it. Looks like there was another kind of recall for the cabin battery terminal. So we can see during ground cable assembly to body, negative terminal of the cabin battery may become loose, and so they just checked that the screw was torqued to spec, and I think everything was good there. And then there was this other kind of recall issue, so wiper linkage interference with main harness. I don't know if this was an issue with my car specifically, but just something they checked out and fixed pretty quickly. So a couple weeks later, so we're to August 28th of 2024. So unfortunately, that kind of creaking from the center console lid had returned. So they kind of evaluated a bit. They added some little felt strips to where kind of the lid kind of sits on top of the console to see if that would help. Seemed like at the time that actually did. I noticed that some of the arch wells along the wheels were loose. I came and fixed some of those, and I noticed that that kind of clicking and creaking from the rear parcel shelf unfortunately hadn't returned. And it looks like in this case the glass was actually touching the partial shelf, so they kind of adjusted that a little bit, and that seemed to help. And then this was TSB for one of the audio upgrades they did. So some cars just had to have this little piece of fabric tape over the A-pillar speakers replaced, and that improved the sound quality apparently. I don't know if I really noticed much of anything, but that was a pretty quick and easy fix apparently. Okay, so now we are to November 30th of 2024. So doing some end of the year road trips. So as you can see, like I'm seeing this weird kind of surging behavior. So if you remember like the Signet surge, this isn't quite as like sporadic and jumpy as that was, but you can see like charging speeds go up to about 175, then they kind of slowly start coming back down to about 150. And so I'd seen this a few different times on this particular road trip that I was on. Again, wasn't really sure what was going on, and I don't know. So just more weird charging issues. So now in addition to the DC charging issues I was potentially having at the time, now I was starting to have AC charging issues. So this is on November 27th. This is right before I was getting ready to take my car down to Arizona for the Lucid Gravity delivery event for the first batch of cars. So as I was trying to get my car charged up before the trip, I first noticed that I would plug in, it would say charging would be starting, and it would just sit here at 0 kilowatts. So wasn't really sure what was going on. It would sit here for a few minutes, and then I would eventually get a charging error. So tried restarting the session multiple times, no luck. Tried using my other charging unit that I have in the garage, no luck there either. So at this point I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to charge up my car to get it down to the event or not. So just out of curiosity, I took it to my closest DC fast charger, which was an EVgo. So plugged in, so we can see we are charging. We're only getting 11 kilowatts for whatever reason. This is like the worst EVgo charging station I've ever been to, by the way. The one in West Valley City, Utah. It's absolutely awful. But at least we're charging. We're getting 17 amps, 648 volts. So it's at least charging. So really not sure what's going on at this point. So I said, can't AC charge at home, but apparently I can AC charge on the DC fast charger. Go figure. So just to kind of keep exploring the issue a little bit, I then went to my closest Electrify America charging station. And so we can see here, I'm at 27% state of charge, getting 129 kilowatts. So a lot closer to normal, definitely getting some reasonable speeds. So it seems like DC charging is working now. So then is AC charging working? Is it just something at home that isn't working? So then I went to my closest familiar AC charger. So at my workplace we've got some, and didn't have any issues here. So I'm pulling 6 kilowatts at these little blink units. So everything seems to be working fine. So started going back home. Near my neighborhood, there's this little sketchy charge point issue at like the Public Works building, and again was able to charge there. So went back home to my Lucid charging unit, which is on an 80 amp circuit. So you can see I'm pulling 18 kilowatts here. So apparently something had fixed itself. So yeah, so not sure what was going on there. So after kind of going back and forth with Lucid about some of these issues, so that AC charging issue happened again a week after the first time, and then a week after that. So for a total of 3 times on that. And then on that road trip down to the Lucid Gravity event, if you haven't seen the out-of-spec motoring video on that, you can see some of the poor charging I was having. I don't think I saw over 200 kilowatts that entire trip, no matter what I did. So I was pretty convinced there was something wrong with my car at this point. And I, again, sent all the data to Lucid, tried to ask, like, is there something wrong with my car? And finally, I did get this response from the service advisor I was talking to. So we can see, based on the telemetry data for your vehicle, we would like to get the Lucid in to perform preventative maintenance. Data is showing that an internal component in the battery system may not be performing as designed. We will still need to verify when we have the vehicle. If verified, the battery will be replaced. Boy, did I feel vindicated. So I was pretty convinced something was wrong. It felt so nice to actually feel like I wasn't absolutely crazy and just making stuff up. So, so this is the first and only time my Lucid has actually been shipped out to a physical Lucid service center. So this one, Seattle, is the physical service center that's in charge of our area for whatever reason. So on 14th of January, my car got loaded up onto a trailer and shipped up to Seattle, which I was a little sad about. I mean, up until now, and I mean, I'm still, like, the car technically drove fine. DC charging wasn't great, but it worked. I was having those annoying AC charging issues, but up until this point, I had never really been stranded or stuck in my Lucid. There was the weird thing in Battle Mountain where I almost got stuck, but that was just a weird specific charging glitch with those chargers, so don't know if I can really fault the car on that one. But, I mean, overall, it's been pretty reliable for me, so I was a little sad to see it go, but I was really looking forward to getting some of these weird charging issues resolved. And so the very next day, I got my Loaner Air Grand Touring, which was a lot of fun. So as far as I'm aware of, I'm actually the first Utah owner to get an actual Lucid Loaner vehicle. Up until then, everyone else has just had to like get a rental comped through Enterprise or something. So this was really cool, and I really appreciate Lucid going way out of the way, not only to have my car shipped all the way up to Seattle and back, but also getting this Lucid Loaner out to the Utah area for us owners out here, so we don't have to get stuck in some crappy rental car. So I really appreciate Lucid going through all that trouble to do that. That was really awesome. So got to play with the GT for a little bit. Sadly, it did have the speed limiter on it, so it could only go like 87 miles per hour, allegedly, but it was still fun. So now let's. So my car was actually only at the service center for a couple weeks, which I was actually pretty surprised with. I had given, in addition to all these charging issues I was having, I gave them a pretty long list of basically any small little fitment issue I could think of, just so we could get all this stuff figured out at once. So let's start going through some of those items that we had them look at. So this is from the service report. So here's kind of the explanation of the issue that they had mentioned with the high voltage battery. So something on Lucid's side. So there's a high voltage battery alert. So you can see there's this error code right here. So these are notes from the technician kind of following for their workflow. What was weird to me is that they see these error codes go away after they reset. So you can see, so it indicating the fault had been successfully resolved after no further issues were present. But then, then it says per the instructions, they go ahead and replace the high voltage battery anyway. So I don't know. Maybe somebody smarter than me that can maybe pick this apart a little bit better can kind of understand this, but so I'm not really sure exactly what the issue was with the high voltage battery, but obviously they did go ahead and replace it. So they deemed something was wrong enough that the whole battery needed to be replaced, and luckily that was all under warranty, so I did not have to pay a cent for that. So in addition to the high voltage battery, they noticed there were some issues with the MPB, motor power battery system. Also, so the onboard charger, what Lucid calls the Wonder Box. So they noted that, there's some fault codes in here. And again, I'm a little confused because it says upon completion of the scan, they see that the fault code did not return, and then they go ahead and replace the MPB anyway. So, I don't know. Again, something wrong enough with the MPB that justified a replacement, and we can see, so up here there's like a relay stuck on condition. So that kind of makes sense with what I was seeing, I think. So my theory is that when I was trying to AC charge the car, I was getting this fault code that wasn't allowing AC charging, but when I would go to DC charge the car, it would reset that fault or whatever, and then I could actually AC charge after that. So that was my theory anyway. So those were the big ticket items. So some of the smaller things. So the actual light bar across the front of the car, mine actually wouldn't stay illuminated for more than half a second when you turn the car on. And it was postulated by the mobile service team that maybe, there was a small little rock chip on the passenger side. They thought maybe that was the reason. Didn't seem like it to me, because it would actually turn on for a split second. So they diagnosed that, decided the light bar was defective, replaced that. So now I actually get the cool charging animation again up front, and the light bar actually illuminates like it's supposed to. So some of the fit and finish and fitment things I noticed. So this is the roof bow. So this is the rear piece of glass, and then up here is the glass canopy that sits over the rear seats. So there's this silver piece of trim that kind of sits along that roof bow, and so you can see it was so loose that I could put my finger underneath each side of it. That was something I noticed maybe like a year or so into my ownership, but it seemed to stay relatively stable. So, but like in the past few months or so, I noticed it was starting to get worse. So I figured I'd have them take a look at that and see if they could get that fixed, which they did, which is great. I also noticed that the kind of rubber sealing around the front passenger side door was starting to come loose. You can see I can totally stick my finger underneath the stripping under here. You can see kind of some of that adhesive is starting to fail. So they replaced that for me as well. A weird thing I was having with my driver's side rear view mirror. So normally when you lock the car, the mirrors will fold in, and when you unlock the car, they'll fold out. So I noticed that for whatever reason, the driver's side rear view mirror would just get stuck sometimes. So unlocking or locking the car wouldn't move. It would just sit there. So they went ahead and replaced that for me. With the front bumper camera, I did collect some rock trips over the 45,000 miles I've driven the car so far. So it was causing a little bit of distortion in that front camera feed. So I went ahead and asked them to replace that. That I did pay for, but it wasn't too bad. So again, here's a picture of that C-pillar. So you can see the trim is kind of warped a little bit. It's kind of peeling away from the frame. So they went ahead and replaced that for me as well. And then, so this is the center console. So here's the storage console right here. So this little kind of like silver trim piece along there was getting kind of loose. So you can see I can kind of like lift it up with my finger. So they went ahead and replaced that for me. Again, was having some issues with the rear parcel shelf. This time I think they added these little plastic pieces to kind of serve as a buffer between the actual parcel shelf and the glass, and it seems to have helped a little bit. I do get a little bit of buzzing or clicking every once in a while, but it seems like it's better overall. And so again, technician noticed that the steering wheel is creaking. Shocker. So they disassembled the steering wheel, applied more felt tape. Okay, that's what they've done a billion times already, but okay. So apparently they noticed that the rear deck lid was under flush, which is something that Colton even noticed when he was doing his build quality analysis 2 years ago. So for whatever reason, it's never really bothered me that much. I don't know, to me that's just kind of how they looked, but I guess they decided that it was out of alignment enough they went and fixed it. I think it does look better now. I don't know if I really notice it all that much, but I'm not complaining. So they also noticed that the side flags were starting to peel, so the little badges that say Touring on there, and then these side belt quarter trims, whatever those are, I don't even know, those were loose, so they went ahead and fixed those for me. Okay, so here's a really interesting thing I found from the API. So I was really curious to see what kind of battery I was going to have in my car now that they had replaced the old battery and replaced it with a new one. I didn't know if it was going to be the same battery. I didn't know what was going to be the same or different about it. So we can see over here on the left, so I screenshotted these stats from the unofficial API while the car was in the shop. So this is basically just right before they had replaced it. So we can see the capacity of the old pack at the time, so this was after about like 45,000 miles, was down to 82.5 kilowatt hours. I'm not sure if they're going off of the usable or the gross capacity. From my understanding, usable was 88 kilowatt hours new, 92 kilowatt hours gross. That may not be correct though. We can see there's like this battery health level measurement. And so that seems to kind of correlate pretty well with the amount of degradation. So, so I'd lost, roughly 6% of the original capacity of the battery pack, which seemed pretty good for me because I haven't exactly been easy on the car. I've done plenty of fast charging, 45,000 miles on the car, so that seemed pretty reasonable to me. And so, big thing to notice here is the battery cell type. So we've got battery cell type LG M48. So those are the cells that were in this pack configuration. And so this is the 18 module Air battery pack. And so one other thing I thought was interesting from the API is you can see kind of down towards the bottom, there's these charging status messages. So general charge, derating charging power. So maybe that had something to do with the weird DC charging issues or AC charging issues I was seeing. I don't know. But I thought it was interesting. I could see those little error messages pop up. And so over here on the right-hand side, we can see what the new battery looks like. So this was right after they replaced it. So capacity in kilowatt hours is up to 93.8. So over 10 kilowatt hours more than I had previously. So that is fantastic. So I'm really excited about that. And we can see over here on the battery cell type. So cell type is SDI 50GV2. So these are Samsung cells. So I'm hoping this is a good thing. I was a little concerned about these LG cells. It seemed like they weren't performing quite as well as the Samsung cells that have been used in like some of the upper trims of the Air, so like the Dream Editions and GT Performance. Seems like those had much better charging performance as well as thermal characteristics. So unfortunately, haven't really tested this much yet. I haven't even actually fast charged my car yet, although that is changing soon. But I'm really curious to see how this new battery pack behaves in terms of range, in terms of charging speeds and thermal performance. So we'll definitely be exploring that this summer plenty. And then I noticed down here at the bottom that derated charging power thing just says general charge. So it seems like whatever error there was before the pack replacement is now cleared. So whatever that means. So then they shipped after replacing all that stuff and putting in the new high voltage battery and the new onboard charger, my car got shipped back to me in Salt Lake City, and it got home on January 31st. So for a little while, I had 2 Lucid Airs in my driveway, which is really fun. But yeah, so haven't really had any new issues since. Those weird AC charging issues are completely gone. Actually haven't DC charged it yet, but I will be doing that soon. So I'm very curious to see what kind of speeds we'll get with this new battery pack and what my efficiency and what my maximum range is going to be. And so that's a wrap. So we're all caught up. So I hope you found this interesting. Even though we did go over quite a few issues I've had with my car, I hope, I just want to make clear that I do really enjoy owning and driving the car still, and overall my ownership experience has been overwhelmingly positive. And almost everyone I've worked with at Lucid, from like the customer care teams to some of the uppers and the service teams, they've all been really great to work with. So I can't speak highly enough about those. So looking forward to hear what kind of questions and comments you have. And I hope I'll see you guys on another video again soon. Thanks. Take care.